General Cax stood motionless in his observation pod, his four eyes fixed on the display screen. He had watched countless species across the galaxy, but nothing had prepared him for what he was seeing now. The humans below were doing something his scientific team had initially classified as impossible. "Play that section again," he ordered, his voice trembling slightly. The footage rewound, showing a group of human soldiers running through what they called an obstacle course. The temperature reader showed 95 degrees in their units called Fahrenheit, and yet these creatures kept moving. One of the soldiers fell, scraping his knee badly on the rough ground. Blood appeared, their red blood, so different from Cax's blue fluid. But instead of stopping, the soldier got up, quickly tied a piece of cloth around the wound, and continued running. Cax's inner stomach churned at the sight. "How long have they been at this?" he asked his assistant. 4 hours, sir. They call it basic training." Cax's upper eyes blinked rapidly while his lower ones remained fixed on the screen. 4 hours of continuous physical activity. His own species could barely manage 20 minutes of moderate exercise before requiring rest. The scene shifted to another training area. Here, humans were lifting metal objects repeatedly, weights, according to their intelligence reports. Some of these objects were nearly half the soldier's body weight, yet they lifted them again and again, even encouraging each other to lift more. "Show me their sustenance intake," Cax commanded. The screen split, showing footage from what humans called a mess hall. Cax watched in horror as the soldiers consumed their meals. They ate plants and animals together, processed foods alongside natural ones, and even substances labeled as extra spicy, which according to their research meant the food caused chemical burns inside their mouths. And they enjoyed it. "Sir," his assistant interrupted, "you should see this." The display changed to show a training exercise from the previous day. A group of soldiers lay in muddy water, their bodies barely visible in the cold rain. They had been there for hours, practicing something called stealth operations. The temperature was near freezing, yet they remained focused on their task. "Their bodies should be shutting down," Cax muttered. "Any reasonable species would be in survival hibernation by now." But the humans weren't just surviving. They were thriving. Their instructors shouted what appeared to be insults, yet instead of breaking down, the soldiers seemed motivated by this. They pushed harder, moved faster, worked together in ways that defied the normal preservation instincts of any sane species. Cax watched as one group finished their training and immediately began helping another group that was struggling. In his species' military, such behavior was unheard of. Competition between units was the norm. Yet these humans strengthened each other, making their entire group more formidable. "Send me everything we have on their medical capabilities," Cax ordered. The information that appeared on his screen made his shoulders droop in disbelief. Humans could lose significant amounts of blood and survive. They could break bones that would heal stronger than before. They could be cut open for something called surgery and be back in training within weeks. Some of them could even lose entire limbs and continue serving using artificial replacements. "This can't be right," he whispered, but the evidence was undeniable. As the day's observations concluded, Cax remained in his pod, reviewing the footage again and again. His species had considered Earth a potential easy target for colonization, but everything he'd seen today challenged that assumption. These humans weren't just soldiers, they were something else entirely. In all his years of military service, Cax had never encountered a species with such a high tolerance for pain, such adaptability to extreme conditions, and such a strong drive to push beyond their limits. The most disturbing part was that this was just their training. What would they be capable of in actual combat? As he finally prepared to leave his observation post, Cax made a decision that would change his life forever. He needed to learn more about these humans, not as potential enemies, but as a species that had mastered what his own kind had always considered impossible. The first seed of doubt about his military career had been planted, though he didn't realize it yet. The grand meeting hall of the Galactic Defense Force buzzed with activity. Hundreds of high-ranking officers sat in rising circles around a central platform, their blue skin reflecting the bright lights above. General Cax stood at the podium, his presentation about Earth playing on the massive screens behind him. "As you can see," Cax said, pointing to the footage of human military exercises, "these creatures are unlike anything we've encountered before." Supreme Commander Rix leaned forward in his seat, his top eyes narrowing. "General Cax, are you suggesting that these humans, these beings from a backward planet, pose a threat to our military superiority?" Cax played his next video clip. It showed human soldiers practicing hand-to-hand combat. One fighter received a hard blow to his face, blood dripping from his nose. Instead of stopping, the human grinned and continued fighting. "They don't just endure pain," Cax explained, his voice growing urgent. "They seem to use it as motivation. Watch this next part." The screen changed to show humans in what they called survival training. They ate insects, drank water from plants, and slept on bare ground in freezing temperatures. "Impossible," someone in the audience shouted. "No species can survive such conditions without proper support systems." "That's exactly my point," Cax replied. "Look at their history records." He displayed images from human wars. Soldiers fighting in deserts, in snow, in deep jungles. They adapted to every environment, survived conditions that would kill most species, and kept fighting even when badly hurt. Supreme Commander Rix stood up, his face showing anger. "General Cax, you've spent too much time watching these creatures. They are primitive. They still use projectile weapons and wheeled vehicles." "Sir, with respect," Cax countered, "their seemingly primitive technology doesn't make them less dangerous. It makes them more dangerous. They don't rely on advanced systems that can be disabled. They can fight with anything they find. Look at this." He played a training video showing humans making weapons from ordinary objects, turning sticks into spears, rocks into tools, even using their clothing to create survival gear. "They call this improvising," Cax explained. "They can turn anything into a weapon. And worse, they teach these skills to all their soldiers, not just special forces." The room erupted in dismissive laughter. "Next you'll tell us they can breathe underwater," someone shouted mockingly. "Actually," Cax said quietly, "they have soldiers who can stay underwater for hours using something called scuba gear. And some of them can hold their breath for several minutes without any equipment." Supreme Commander Rix slammed his hand on his desk. "Enough. General Cax, you're letting your imagination run wild. These humans are just another species we'll eventually add to our empire. Your concerns are noted, but dismissed." Cax stood silent for a moment, looking at his fellow officers. None of them understood. None of them had watched the humans as closely as he had. None of them had seen what these creatures were truly capable of. "There's one more thing," Cax said, his voice firm. "Their greatest weapon isn't physical at all. It's their spirit. They have something they call never give up. When most species would surrender, humans fight harder. When they should retreat, they attack. When they should die, they survive." "This meeting is over," Supreme Commander Rix announced. "General Cax, report to medical for evaluation. Clearly, your time observing Earth has affected your judgment." As the other officers filed out of the hall, many giving him pitying looks, Cax remained at the podium. He looked one last time at the images of human soldiers on the screen. They had a saying he'd learned: "Better to die on your feet than live on your knees." For the first time in his career, General Cax understood what that meant, and he knew what he had to do next. General Cax sat in his private office, staring at the resignation document on his screen. In 3,000 years of his species' military history, no high-ranking officer had ever quit. They served until death or retirement. Quitting was seen as cowardice, as weakness. But humans had taught him something about courage. Sometimes, the bravest action was walking away. He pressed his hand against the DNA reader, signing the document officially. Immediately, alert sounds rang through the military headquarters. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Within minutes, his door slid open, and Supreme Commander Rix rushed in with 2 security officers. "Have you lost your mind?" Rix demanded, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly in anger. "This is desertion." Cax stood up calmly, removing his rank insignia from his uniform. "No, sir. This is resignation. I followed all proper procedures." "Procedures?" Rix laughed bitterly. "There are no procedures for this. No general has ever quit." "Perhaps that's part of our problem," Cax replied, placing his insignia on the desk. "We never question. We never change. But humans, they question everything. They constantly adapt, improve, change their tactics." The security officers looked uncomfortable, shifting their weight from one foot to another. They'd never seen a general being confronted like this. "The humans have corrupted your thinking," Rick said, his voice lower now. "We'll get you help. Medical treatment, psychological repair. Just withdraw the resignation." Cax walked to his office window, looking out at the artificial rings that surrounded their military planet. Everything here was ordered, controlled, predictable. Everything except what he was doing right now. "Did you know," he said quietly, "that humans have a tradition called following your heart? It means making decisions based not just on logic, but on deep inner feelings." "That's primitive thinking," Rick snapped. "We evolved past such emotional decision-making thousands of years ago." "Did we evolve? Or did we stop growing?" Cax turned to face them. "Humans make mistakes. They fail. They feel pain. But they learn from everything. They get stronger. While he gestured around his office, "we haven't changed our military strategies in 500 years. Rick stepped closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "Think about your career, your reputation, your family status. All of this will be destroyed." Cax thought about the human soldiers he'd watched. How they risked everything to save their fellow soldiers. How they valued honor and truth above comfort and safety. He straightened his back, standing taller. "My reputation means nothing if I ignore the truth," he said firmly. "We're not superior to humans. In many ways, they're stronger than us. They can survive things we can't imagine. They can adapt to any situation. And most importantly, they're not afraid to change." He walked to his desk and pressed a button. All his computer screens went dark as his access to military systems was automatically cut off. The process had begun. There would be no going back. "Don't do this," Rix tried one last time. "Think about." "I have thought about it," Cax interrupted. "For the first time in my career, I'm thinking clearly." He walked to the door, then turned back. "You know what humans call this? They call it standing up for what you believe in." As he walked out of his office, passing shocked staff members in the corridors, Cax felt strangely peaceful. Another human phrase came to his mind. "A weight lifted from my shoulders." He understood that feeling now. In his quarters that evening, as he packed his personal belongings, Cax received hundreds of messages from other officers. Some called him crazy. Some secretly admired his courage. But none of them mattered anymore. He had a new mission now, to reach Earth, to learn from humans directly, and maybe, just maybe, to help his own people understand that true strength wasn't about never changing. It was about having the courage to change when necessary. Stealing a military scout ship wasn't really stealing when you knew all the access codes. At least, that's what Cax told himself as he prepared the small vessel for launch. His years as a general had taught him every security protocol, every patrol pattern, and most importantly, every blind spot in the system. The ship was perfect for his needs, small enough to avoid detection but equipped with advanced cloaking technology. He had spent 3 days loading it with supplies and modifying its identification codes. Now, sitting in the pilot's seat, he checked his chosen destination one final time. "Computer, show me the selected landing zone again," he commanded. A hologram appeared, showing a remote area in what humans called Canada. From his research, Cax had learned that Canadians were known for being friendly and peaceful. If any humans would give him a chance to explain himself before shooting, it would be them. Warning, the computer announced. Ship's log requires mission parameters. Cax smiled slightly. Even now, the system wanted everything to follow proper procedures. He typed in his mission description. Long-term anthropological study. It wasn't exactly a lie. The night cycle provided perfect cover for his departure. Most of the base's security systems were automated, but Cax had spent weeks creating false maintenance records that would keep them offline for exactly 7 minutes, more than enough time for a skilled pilot to slip away. As he guided the ship out of its hangar, Cax thought about everything he was leaving behind. His career, his status, his whole life, all traded for the chance to understand these fascinating humans up close. His own people would call him crazy, but humans had a saying he liked better: follow your dreams. The ship rose silently through the atmosphere. Instead of using the standard space lanes, Cax followed a path through the asteroid belt. Messy and dangerous, but almost impossible to track. He had plotted this course carefully, studying the routes that smugglers use to avoid military patrols. Computer, activate cloaking systems, he ordered as they cleared the asteroid field. The ship seemed to disappear from all sensors, becoming just another piece of space darkness. The journey to Earth would take 12 days at maximum safe speed. Cax used this time to study more human behavior through their entertainment videos, which he had downloaded secretly over several months. He was particularly fascinated by something called road trips, long journeys humans took just for fun, often leading to unexpected adventures. In a way, he said to himself, I'm on my own road trip. On the 10th day, the ship's sensors detected Earth's solar system. Cax felt his heart beat faster. He had watched this planet for so long through observation devices, but seeing it with his own eyes was different. The blue-green world grew larger in his view screen, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Entering the atmosphere was the trickiest part. He had to move slowly enough to avoid detection by human radar, but fast enough to prevent any amateur astronomers from spotting his ship. The cloaking system helped, but it wasn't perfect. The Canadian wilderness spread out below him, endless forests and lakes that looked perfect for hiding a small spacecraft. Cax had chosen his landing site near a place humans called a national park, protected land where some hiking activity would make his arrival less noticeable. As the ship touched down in a small clearing, Cax ran one final check of his preparation. He had modified his appearance slightly to seem less threatening, dulling his natural blue skin tone to a more grayish color. His universal translator was updated with all Earth languages. He even had some human currency, obtained through careful online trading. Well, he said to himself, using a human phrase he'd learned, here goes nothing. The ship's door opened with a soft hiss. Earth air rushed in, rich with oxygen, filled with the scents of plants and soil. Cax took his first breath of air from his new home. There would be no going back now, but he didn't want to. His new life was about to begin. Cax had planned for many possible first encounters with humans, military response teams, government agents, even angry farmers with weapons. What he hadn't planned for was a group of elderly hikers who seemed more interested in his choice of landing spot than his alien appearance. You really shouldn't park here, friend, said a tall human with white hair and a walking stick. This is a protected butterfly breeding ground. Cax blinked all 4 eyes, his translator working to process not just the words but the calm tone. The human had called him friend, despite his obvious alien appearance. 5 other humans stood behind the first one, all wearing colorful clothes and carrying backpacks. I apologize, Cax said carefully. I was unaware of the butterflies. A shorter human with a red cap stepped forward. I'm Tom, he said, then gestured to his companions. We're the Silver Trail Hikers Club. You picked a beautiful spot to land, but we should probably move your ship before the park rangers come by. Cax studied Tom's face, noting the scars and the way he carried himself. You were a soldier, he said, recognizing the familiar stance. Tom smiled. Marines, retired. 20 years of service. He looked at Cax's straight posture and formal manner. And I'm guessing you're military too, wherever you're from. Former general, Cax admitted. I left my position recently. Well, you picked the right country to visit, Tom said, reaching into his backpack. Here, you must be hungry after your trip. Try some trail mix. Cax stared at the bag of mixed nuts and dried fruits being offered to him. In all his studies of human behavior, this casual sharing of food with an unknown alien hadn't been covered. His species would never do this. Food sharing was reserved for family and close friends only. Is this normal? Cax asked, offering food to strangers. An elderly woman in the group laughed. Honey, you're in Canada. We'd offer tea and cookies to an invading army. The group chuckled, and Cax found himself relaxing slightly. He took the offered trail mix, his scanner showing it was safe for his biology. The taste was explosive, sweet, salty, and crunchy all at once. His species ate only soft, bland foods. This was amazing. This is incredible, he said, taking another handful. Wait till you try maple syrup, Tom said, grinning. But first, let's move your ship. I know a better spot about 2 miles north. Used to be an old ranger station there, very private. As they walked through the forest, Cax's ship hovering silently behind them thanks to its anti-gravity system, the hikers asked him questions, but not the questions he expected. Nobody asked about his weapons or technology. Instead, they wanted to know if he had family, what his favorite foods were, and if he'd ever seen snow. So why Earth? Tom asked as they reached the abandoned ranger station. Of all the planets you could visit. Cax watched a butterfly land on his ship's hull. I was supposed to study humans as potential enemies, he admitted. But the more I watched, the more fascinated I became. Your species is remarkable. Remarkably stubborn, you mean? Tom laughed. We're probably the most hard-headed species in the galaxy. That's part of what amazes me, Cax said. You face impossible situations, but you never give up. You adapt, you survive, you help each other. In my world, everyone follows rules and stays in their place. But humans dream bigger. Tom was quiet for a moment, then said, You know what? I've got a spare room at my cabin. Why don't you stay there while you figure things out? Better than sleeping in your ship, and my wife makes the best pancakes in British Columbia. Cax felt something he hadn't expected. Emotion. These humans, who had every reason to fear or attack him, were instead offering him food and shelter. They were treating him like family. Thank you, he said, using words he'd learned from his studies. That's very kind of you. That's what humans do, Tom replied simply. We help each other, even when each other turns out to be a blue alien who parks in butterfly sanctuaries. Living with Tom and his wife, Mary turned out to be an education in human life that no amount of military observation could have provided. 1 month into his stay, Cax found himself doing something he never imagined, making a video for what humans called social media. Just be yourself, Tom said, holding up a phone to record. People love your honest reactions to Earth stuff. Cax sat at the kitchen table, staring at something called a pizza, a circular food item covered in melted cheese, tomato sauce, and various toppings. In his 3 months on Earth, he had learned that humans would put cheese on almost anything. This is my first time trying pizza, Cax said to the camera. The amount of different foods on one flat bread seems excessive, but Tom assures me this is normal. He took a bite, and his eyes all widened at once. The explosion of flavors was incredible. His reaction made Tom laugh so hard he almost dropped the phone. The video went viral overnight. Soon, Cax had millions of followers watching him experience Earth life for the first time. People loved his amazement at simple things they took for granted, like dogs. The first time he met Tom's golden retriever, Max, Cax was confused. You keep a predator in your house. As a friend. Max is family, Mary explained, as the dog happily wagged its tail. Most Earth pets are. Cax learned that humans formed deep emotional bonds not just with each other, but with animals. It was fascinating. His own species saw animals only as resources or threats. Sports were another revelation. Tom took him to a hockey game, where Cax watched in amazement as humans deliberately slid around on frozen water, chasing a small disc and sometimes fighting each other, all for fun. "But they could get hurt," he exclaimed. "That's part of the excitement," Tom explained. "Life isn't about being completely safe all the time. It's about taking risks for things you enjoy." Each new experience became a popular video. Cax trying ice cream for the first time. His reaction to brain freeze was particularly entertaining. Cax learning to swim in the lake behind Tom's cabin. Cax attempting to dance at a local festival. His extra limbs made for some interesting moves. But it wasn't all fun and games. One day, Tom found Cax sitting quietly on the porch, looking troubled. "Everything okay?" Tom asked. "I've been thinking about my people," Cax replied. "We've become so focused on order and control that we've lost something important. Something humans have in abundance." "What's that?" "Joy," Cax said simply. "The ability to find happiness in small things, to laugh at yourselves, to try new experiences just because you can." His videos started including these deeper observations about human life. He talked about how humans found strength in their emotions rather than suppressing them, how they turned strangers into friends through simple kindness, how they faced life's challenges with humor and determination. To his surprise, these thoughtful videos became even more popular than his reaction videos. Humans appreciated seeing themselves through his eyes, not as primitive creatures, but as beings who had mastered something his own species had forgotten: how to truly live. One evening, as he helped Mary cook dinner, another new experience. Cooking was automated in his world. She asked him if he missed his old life. Cax thought about his military career, the rigid structure, the endless rules. Then he looked around the warm kitchen, at Tom teaching him to chop vegetables, at Max sleeping nearby, at the mess they were making trying to bake cookies. "No," he said honestly, "I don't miss it at all. For the first time in my life, I feel free." "Well," Mary said, handing him an apron with "Kiss the Cook" written on it, "freedom can get messy. Speaking of which, the cookie dough goes in the bowl, not on your face." Cax touched his cheek, realizing he had somehow gotten flour all over himself. And then he did something that would have shocked his former military colleagues. He laughed. A real, joyful, human-like laugh. The military ships appeared in Earth's orbit exactly 6 months after Cax's arrival. Their sudden presence sent human governments into high alert, but before any panic could spread, a familiar face appeared on every screen worldwide. "My fellow humans," Cax said, speaking from Tom's living room, Max the dog sleeping peacefully beside him. "Please don't worry. I can explain everything." His video channel, now with over 50 million followers, had become Earth's most direct line of communication with alien life. Over the past months, his honest observations about human life had earned him the trust of people worldwide. Now that trust was about to be tested. "Those ships belong to my former military," he explained calmly. "They've come to take me back. But thanks to you all, I have a better idea." In the 6 months since his arrival, Cax had shown his followers everything from his first attempt at swimming to his amazement at human music. But more importantly, he had shown them his growth from a rigid military commander into someone who understood the true strength of humanity. Tom stood behind the camera, giving Cax an encouraging thumbs up. Mary brought him a cup of hot chocolate, his new favorite Earth drink. "To my former commanders watching this," Cax continued, "you think you're seeing a planet of primitive warriors. But I've learned that humans are so much more. They're artists who create beautiful things just for joy. They're explorers who climb mountains simply because they're there. They're dreamers who look at the stars and imagine possibilities." The military ships remained in orbit, their presence ominous but inactive. Cax's broadcast continued, now showing clips from his months on Earth, helping at a local food bank, playing with children in a park, learning to fish with Tom, even failing hilariously at karaoke. "Look at these humans," he said. "They could have treated me as an enemy. Instead, they welcomed me into their homes, shared their food, taught me their ways. They showed me that true strength isn't about control or power. It's about kindness, adaptation, and growth." To everyone's surprise, Supreme Commander Rix himself responded to the broadcast. His face appeared next to Cax's on screens worldwide. "You disappeared with military secrets," Rix said sternly. "You betrayed your position." "No," Cax replied, taking a sip of hot chocolate. "I discovered something more valuable than military secrets. I found a better way of living. And if you're willing to listen, we can learn from humans instead of fearing them." What happened next would be remembered in both human and alien history books. Rix, seeing Cax's genuine transformation and the positive response from humans worldwide, made an unprecedented decision. "Perhaps," Rix said slowly, "we should open diplomatic channels." The tension broke. Within weeks, official diplomatic relations began between Earth and Cax's people. But instead of traditional diplomats, both sides agreed on a different approach. They would start with cultural exchange. Cax's video channel became the official bridge between the two species. He continued showing humans alien technology and customs, while teaching his own people about human creativity, adaptability, and joy. "You know what's funny?" Tom said one evening, as they watched the sunset from his porch. "You came here to study human soldiers, but you ended up teaching both species about peace." Cax nodded, watching Max chase butterflies in the yard. A year ago, he would have seen such activity as a waste of energy. Now he understood. It was these simple joys that made life worth living. "Humans taught me something important," he replied. "The strongest warriors aren't those who never fall, but those who know how to live in peace. Your species mastered both." His phone buzzed with another 1,000,000 views on his latest video, teaching alien children how to make paper airplanes with human kids. The comments were filled with hope and friendship from both species. "So," Mary called from the kitchen, "who's ready for your first lesson in baking a birthday cake? Your followers have been requesting it." Cax smiled, all 4 eyes twinkling with joy. He had come to Earth expecting to understand human warfare. Instead, he had learned about human love, laughter, and life. And that, he realized, was the greatest discovery of all.